My wife defended him, saying I was rude, which led me to remind her of the boundaries in our relationship. She dismissed my concern with an eye roll, a gesture I always disliked. Not wanting to create a scene, I let the matter drop. Dinner passed, and when the band started playing, I asked her to dance, but she declined, leaving me disheartened. As I chatted with others, I kept a watchful eye on the senator, who eventually stepped onto the veranda. Worried, I followed and found him with his arm around my wife, engaged in what looked like an intimate conversation. As I moved to intervene, someone stopped me, cautioning me against confronting the senator. Frustrated, I declared, "That's my wife he's touching," before being shoved back into the ballroom. Undeterred, I demanded that he return my wife, even threatening to make a scene. Begrudgingly, he brought her back, feigning innocence. The ride home was tense. Initially silent, my wife eventually exploded, accusing me of embarrassing her. I defended my actions, saying I was only enforcing the boundaries of our marriage. She countered, calling me possessive and immature. Blushing but silent, she conceded my point. The strain between us impacted the family dynamic, making even dinner with the kids uncomfortable. By Wednesday, she demanded a serious discussion, a sign of trouble. The talk went poorly. She revealed plans to attend another fundraiser with the senator, insisting it wasn't a date. I protested, questioning the appropriateness, but she denied any wrongdoing. When I pointed out her double standards, especially regarding her friend Angie, her reaction revealed her bias. "It's completely different," she argued, claiming that spending time with a senator was nothing like a typical date. "There's a huge difference, right?" I reminded her that we were married and emphasized the importance of our vows. "You don't own me, Reggie," she retorted sharply. "Even in marriage, I'm my own person." Pleading with her, I reminded her of our family, hoping to avoid a breakup. She dismissed me, refusing to acknowledge the gravity of her actions. I was stunned when Hester appeared in a striking white gown for her evening out. The kids, amazed by her appearance, asked why she was dressed so elegantly. She struggled to answer, but I bluntly told them the truth as the doorbell rang. Confronting her, I asked her to choose, him or our family. She opened the door to a security guard escorting her to a waiting black limousine. "Behave for Daddy," she said casually before leaving. I stood there, momentarily stunned, but quickly refocused on the kids, knowing they needed my attention. Drinking my frustrations away wasn't an option. Instead, I made a few FaceTime calls to our parents. The kids enjoyed chatting with their grandparents. Starting with Hester's parents, I subtly explained her recent actions, anticipating their disapproval. As expected, they were shocked to learn she'd gone out with the senator. My in-laws couldn't believe I allowed it, but I explained that I had tried reasoning with her, emphasizing the importance of family. The kids took over the call, providing a brief respite from the tension. Later, I spoke with my own parents. My mother, less sympathetic, suggested I consult a lawyer. After a few calls, I ordered pizza, watched a Disney movie with the kids, and tried to distract myself with ESPN, though sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, I made pancakes and bacon, reassuring the kids that their mom would return, though I wasn't certain when. Around 1 p.m., the black limo pulled into the driveway. The kids and neighbors noticed, but the usual excitement to greet their mom was absent. She emerged in the same dress from the previous night, now wrinkled and worn, her appearance tired and unimpressive. Seated in the living room, I greeted her as she entered. "Looks like you and the kids managed without me," she said casually. I replied coldly, and she retreated upstairs to shower and rest. Mocking surrender, I realized our relationship was over. My focus shifted to making life easier for the kids, determined not to become an absentee father. The thought lingered, could I endure until they graduated high school? When Hester finally came downstairs at 7 p.m., I had already prepared dinner. Pointing to the leftovers in the fridge, I received only a faint smile. The kids, sensing the tension, kept their distance. Later, Hester accused me of turning them against her. I denied it, instead highlighting how her actions had impacted both the kids and our reputation. "I didn't ruin our family," she argued, trying to shift the blame. "It's up to you. Fix your ego and we can heal. But if you stay petty and mean, we'll have to go our own ways and you can be a part-time dad, she warned, catching me completely off guard. I had anticipated regret, not defiance and anger. It's 1 in the afternoon, for crying out loud, I shot back. Was last night not enough? You needed a half-day fling too? She hesitated, avoiding eye contact. We can move past this and get back to normal. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry, but I don't regret it. I needed this for myself, she said, unapologetic. If that's an apology, it's a terrible one, I replied. You're only sorry for causing me pain, not for what you did. It was something I needed, she retorted defensively. My response was firm. Your choices broke our vows and disrespected our family. I reminded her of how shocked she had been when I found her in the guest room. We can't fix this unless you try, she pleaded. It's too late for that, I replied, locking her out of the room. That night, I slept deeply, worn out by 48 hours of conflict. The next morning, I carried on with our usual Sunday brunch tradition, making Belgian waffles. Mom looks terrible, like she didn't sleep, Ellie commented as we sat down. Maybe you should go out on Friday nights more often, I teased. Hester burst into tears and fled to the bedroom, leaving the kids confused. Did I say something bad? Ellie asked innocently. No, sweetheart. Mommy probably just missed the waffles, I assured her gently. Later, as I relaxed in my recliner watching the Cubs game, the bedroom door flew open, and an enraged Hester stormed in, rambling incoherently. Take a breath, honey. I can't understand you when you're sputtering, I remarked calmly. She cried, accusing me of making her seem promiscuous to her parents. What's a Kardashian, Mommy? Elise asked, wandering into the room. I exchanged a glance with Hester, who pulled herself together and sent the kids to their rooms before confronting me. Why would you do that? She demanded as soon as we were alone. I didn't see a reason to hide it from your parents. You were just attending a fundraiser with a senator, weren't you? I replied. If they took my side, that's not my fault. By the way, my mom had the same reaction, so maybe be careful next time. It's not like that, she started, then stopped herself. An amazing experience? I interrupted sarcastically. Her glare could have killed, but I wasn't fazed. I motioned for her to step aside so I could see the TV, and she stormed out. For 2 weeks, I slept in the guest room. When the kids asked, I said I had a cold and didn't want their mother to catch it. I suspected Eliza saw through my lie, but wisely kept quiet. Her insight, impressive for a 7-year-old, surprised me. One night, an hour after Hester had gone to bed, I slipped back into our shared bed. The next morning, when the alarm went off, she curled up beside me. This feels nice, she murmured. It's time to come to your senses. She tried to touch me, but I stopped her, gently moving her hand away. I repositioned us so we were facing each other. Some things require honesty, I said softly. Before I'm willing to be intimate with you again, you need to get tested and show me the results. You might trust the senator, but I don't. Tears filled her eyes. She seemed ready to speak, but stayed silent, eventually nodding. Her reaction revealed that she and the senator hadn't been careful. This revelation made the situation even more complex. Initially, I had planned to stay until the kids graduated high school, about 14 more years, because my love for them outweighed everything else. However, the thought of long-term proximity, especially with such unresolved issues, felt unbearable. Over the past 2 weeks, my feelings for her had diminished. Watching her leave our bed looking sad no longer moved me, as it once had. My own hurt kept me from offering comfort. Who was she now? The woman I married would have understood my disapproval of her behavior. Hester and I had met in college, started dating after 3 months, and married within 2 years. She worked as an actuary, a role demanding accuracy and integrity, which complemented my spontaneous, humorous nature. Despite our differences, I had imagined growing old together. Senator Thomas Norberto had changed everything. 10 days after returning to our bed, Hester handed me an envelope when I got home from work. Inside was proof of her clean bill of health. Hope you're happy, she muttered coldly. You have no idea how humiliating that was. I can never look Dr. Sang in the eye again. Not my problem, I replied. Be faithful, and you won't have to feel embarrassed. She hissed under her breath but said nothing more as she walked away. How often does the senator contact you? I pressed. She began to respond, but I silenced her with a gesture. Grimacing, she handed me her phone. I found messages and calls from him, but no evidence of further meetings. This is a mess, I muttered. Agreed, she said seriously, pocketing her phone and heading to the kitchen. That night, she tried to reconnect with me in bed, and I gave in instinctively. My feelings for her hadn't returned. I was simply fulfilling a need. She was trying to win me back, but my mind was elsewhere. Hester's abrupt return home had sparked neighborhood gossip. Men offered sympathetic looks, while women smirked knowingly. One evening, Eliza asked me about a women's club. Keeping my composure, I explained that Mommy had made a mistake, but assured her everything would be fine. I hugged her tightly, hiding my pain, knowing the moment would haunt me. Slowly, a sense of normalcy returned to the household, but it was a different kind of normal. Things could never go back to how they were. I couldn't fully trust her again or forget the deep disrespect she had shown. As Tina Turner famously said, "What's love got to do with it?" 6 months later, Hester seemed to have grasped something. Or perhaps she had found the courage to speak. One evening, after a moment she initiated, I turned away from her in bed, as had become my habit. Before she spoke, I could hear her crying. "Reggie, can we talk?" she asked softly. "What's on your mind?" I replied. "Could you turn around, please?" she asked, irritation evident in her tone. I sighed, trying to mask my frustration, and turned to face her. She held my gaze. "Do you realize how long it's been since we were close?" she asked. "Say it," I insisted. "If you had the courage to act, have the courage to admit it." "We haven't been close since I went on that date," she said quietly. "I noticed," I replied. "You meet my physical needs, then fall asleep." "I'm happy, but it feels like it's just physical," she said. "You haven't hugged me in ages, and I miss that connection." "You can't even bring yourself to say it," I replied. "Your date, you cheated on me with him. Just admit it. I'm not an idiot. You go out on a date and don't come home until the next day. How does that not come across as sleazy?" She shook her head. "No, we made love that Saturday night, and it was incredible. He was kind and thoughtful, just like you used to be. Honestly, it was an unforgettable experience." "Exactly," I said coldly. "That's why we're not making love anymore. Don't you see? You gave him something that you vowed was mine alone, and you enjoyed it. It was unforgettable, as you so eloquently put it. Reggie, come on! It was one night, 2 days. Statistically, that's insignificant compared to the hundreds of days we've spent together as a married couple. We can move past this if you're willing to try," she pleaded. "Thanks for the math lesson," I shot back, "but I've never looked at our marriage as a numbers game. Would you feel the same if I did it with Mary Jo Young?" "Mary Jo Young?" she asked, confused. The conversation shifted back to the ongoing emotional strain between Reggie and Hester. Mary Jo Young, a divorced blonde with an attractive figure, lived nearby. Most women in the neighborhood kept a wary eye on her whenever their husbands were around. "Wait, are you saying you want Mary Jo?" she exclaimed. "That's not what I said," I clarified. "Listen to yourself. That thought came from you, not me. I was simply asking how you'd feel if I did." Her face shifted from confusion to realization and then to anger. "I can see what you're getting at without you saying it outright," I said smugly as she averted her gaze. "You know," I continued, "because of what you did, the other kids at school have been bullying Eliza. Their mothers overheard gossip and called you names. It hasn't been easy for her." Her anger turned to shock as she processed the information. "Eliza never said anything," she murmured, taking a deep breath. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I replied flatly. "You described that night as unforgettable." "It was unforgettable, all right. Unforgettable for its betrayal." With that, I turned away and went to bed, not waiting to see her reaction. To her credit, Hester stepped up as a parent in the months that followed. Previously, I had handled most of the responsibilities with the kids, but she began actively participating, driving them to their activities and being more present in their lives. It made me wonder if she finally understood that putting our family first was the only way to keep us together. The children seemed to enjoy the extra attention, and once again, Eliza's perceptiveness amazed me. "Dad, Mom's really trying," she said to me one day. "I hope she gets a proper apology for whatever she did wrong." I forced a smile, acknowledging her sharp awareness. Outwardly, life at the Wilkerson house appeared normal. I worked hard to maintain that illusion, while Hester seemed to be making a genuine effort. Not just for appearances, but also to win me back. Despite these efforts, we remained two individuals sharing a home and occasionally reaping certain benefits. Deep down, she expected I'd eventually forgive her. Part of me still cared for her, but it was buried beneath the damage she had caused. The years we'd spent together couldn't be erased overnight, but her choices made it hard to see her the same way. To make things worse, she kept in touch with Senator Thomas. While she claimed to maintain distance, I knew better. Cloning her phone had allowed me to see their conversations. He'd recently texted, "Can we set up another meeting soon? I'll be in town." Her response was, "My husband's still upset about last time. I can't take that risk." That didn't impress me. A month later, we marked our 10th wedding anniversary with a trip to Chuck E. Cheese. The kids had a great time, but Hester didn't. Once the kids were off playing games, she turned to me, clearly unhappy. "We've always celebrated our anniversaries with a special night for just the two of us. Are you really this petty, changing tradition because you're still holding a grudge?" "When did I become this way?" I asked rhetorically. "Probably around the same time you decided to have your date. You did this. To me, to us, and to yourself. Can't you let this go?" she begged. "How often do you two still talk?" I asked bluntly. Her lips curled into a faint smirk as she pulled out her phone and handed it to me. Tossing it lightly in the air before catching it, I said, "I know you're not stupid enough to leave any evidence of your affair on here. Not since the first time I caught you. But I also know you've never explicitly told him to stop contacting you. Why is that?" She looked away, her cheeks reddening. "I already know the answer," I muttered. "Through all of this, my career and my children provided the only real stability. Still, I wasn't immune to the toll it took." Colleagues remarked that I looked exhausted, and they weren't wrong. My drinking had increased, sleep eluded me, and I was sure I was developing an ulcer. On sleepless nights, I'd lie in bed, staring at my wife and wondering where it had all gone wrong. She insisted she still loved me and justified her actions as separate from our relationship. She felt no guilt, only remorse for the pain she had caused me. Oddly enough, my mother-in-law became a source of support during this time. She expressed deep regret for her daughter's behavior. "Reggie, I'm so sorry," she told me. "We didn't raise her to be so selfish. I just hope you can find a way to move past this." During one of her check-ins, she said this to me. I understood her intentions were for the children. Heading to the kitchen, I grabbed another cooler of beer to bring outside. We were hosting our usual summer neighborhood picnic. Outside, 2 grills sizzled with food, while a spread of hot and cold dishes, fruits, desserts, and drinks was laid out. The weather couldn't have been better. Bright sunshine, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and barely a breeze. The event had begun hours earlier and would likely go on for 5 or 6 more. These gatherings were always a hit with both adults and kids. As I made my way through the house, I overheard women's voices coming from the home office, a space typically off limits to anyone outside our family. Planning to redirect them to the living room or another area, I moved closer. While most activities stayed outdoors, someone occasionally stepped inside for the air conditioning or a private chat. This, however, was not the right room for such discussions. "When Reggie takes charge, I can't help but think of him," Hester was saying. "He's assertive, focused, and so determined. Sometimes I can't stop thinking about that night. It's something I'll always treasure." Frozen in place, I stopped mid-step, my legs feeling like jelly. My stomach churned, and I nearly stumbled. How many people know about my betrayal? I wondered. I caught laughter. There were 3 voices in total, but I missed the rest as I rushed to the restroom, fighting nausea. I barely made it in time, emptying my stomach completely. Once I composed myself, I cleaned up and carried the cooler of beers outside, handing 2 bottles to the men tending the grills. "You all right, Ree?" John asked casually, noting my demeanor. "Yeah, I'm fine," I muttered before walking away. I stayed quiet for the remainder of the gathering, feeling the weight of prying eyes. When Hester and her friends returned, their glances in my direction, accompanied by smirks, were hard to miss. Maybe it was paranoia, but it felt like nearly every woman there was sneering at me. Later that evening, after putting the kids to bed and finishing the cleanup, I confronted Hester about what had been bothering me. She was lounging in a chair, sipping on a wine cooler, looking content. I sat down beside her. "Did anyone at the party not know about your affair?" I asked bluntly. She looked startled. I stared back, feigning an innocent expression. "I might have mentioned it to a couple of friends recently," she admitted with a chuckle. "It was such a thrilling experience, Reggie. He's quite the charming senator," I couldn't help but share. "So first, you cheat on me, and now you've made me a joke in front of your friends, letting every husband in the neighborhood know about your infidelity. You've branded me as the fool who's been betrayed," I accused. "I'm not unfaithful, and I refuse to be labeled as such," she fired back. "It was one mistake. I didn't sleep with some random stranger in a seedy motel," she said angrily, standing up. "I've had enough of this," she declared, her voice rising. "You've been holding this over my head for more than a year. Yes, I made a mistake, but your wife had an affair with a handsome, successful man. It's time to move forward. I won't let your insecurities trap me any longer. Either file for divorce or face reality. I'm done pretending we're the perfect couple. Make your choice now." Her outburst left me stunned. She stormed away, leaving me alone to process her words. I sat there for what felt like hours, reeling. My natural tendency is to be calm and slow to respond, which some, including Hester, mistake for weakness. But inside, I was grappling with the idea of not seeing my children every day. Still, I resolved to take action to protect what mattered most. That Monday morning, I served Hester with divorce papers at her workplace. I'd been prepared for the fallout, with a lawyer already on standby. As expected, her reaction was swift. Just minutes after receiving the papers, my phone erupted with calls which I ignored. I knew what awaited me at home. As soon as I stepped inside from the garage, Hester's fury erupted. "You idiot!" she yelled. "Your fragile ego couldn't handle it, so you humiliate me in front of my colleagues? Just like you embarrassed us in front of our friends and neighbors. You practically begged me to file, so I did," I said calmly. She shot me a scornful look, but didn't respond. I set down my things and went to talk to the kids, reassuring them of my love despite the changes ahead. Elise, being older, seemed to understand, having friends with divorced parents. Nate, however, was confused and upset. I knew this would be hardest on him, though I trusted Elise to help him adjust. Living in a no-fault state made the legal process seem straightforward. Hester was expected to gain primary custody of the kids, the house, child support, and some alimony. But instead, she fiercely contested the divorce, dragging things out with delays and even suggesting counseling. "What's your angle, Hester?" I asked during one session. "Your actions scream louder than your words. You claim to love me, yet you've caused so much pain. You've even told your friends he was the best you ever had. Why would I want to stay in a marriage that only brings me frustration? I love our kids, but if I stay, they'll only remember an angry, bitter father." "I love you, Reggie," she pleaded. "Are you really going to let one mistake define everything?" "Yes, he was amazing, but it was a one-time thing. Please forgive me." "I can't, Hester," I replied. "You broke our vows and mocked what they meant. I can't look past that." While I hadn't initially planned this, I realized that everyone has a breaking point. Over a year ago, after learning about Hester's affair, I'd quietly begun preparing for this moment. I approached a skilled attorney in our city who connected me with the head of the opposing political party. They were eager for anything that could damage Senator Prick's reputation and hinder his career. My lawyer had kept me updated monthly, and now the time had come. The chairman arranged to meet at my lawyer's office. After brief introductions, I placed a sealed plastic bag on the table. The chairman's eyes widened in shock. "Dear God," he muttered. "Is that what I think it is? If you believe it's evidence capable of ending Senator Prick's career, then yes," I replied. "Yes," I responded. The men studied the bag as though it contained priceless treasures. hesitating to touch it and instead continuing to stare in awe. That arrogant woman went upstairs for a shower when she got home, I began recounting. Since she handles the laundry, she likely assumed I wouldn't bother with the hamper. I waited until I heard the water running before entering the bathroom and digging through the basket. At the very bottom, I found the underwear. Nowadays, everyone understands DNA testing thanks to TV shows, I continued. I'm certain that once you test these, you'll detect two distinct profiles. I've also brought her toothbrush for comparison. I assume you'll gather the senator's DNA sample, unless you already have it. I shot the chairman a pointed look as I spoke. He flushed and averted his eyes, just as I'd expected. He clearly understood the case's complexities, so I didn't bother explaining further. Still, I could see the unspoken question written on his face. Why? Because she's too foolish to realize she shouldn't cross me, I declared. She betrayed me and arrogantly expects me to forgive her, even flaunting it in my face. To hell with her and the senator she keeps company with. Your career is over, Thomas, Norberto raged during a phone call with Hester a week after my meeting with the chairman. Damn you, woman. How could your weak husband possibly get evidence of our weekend together? I don't know what you're talking about, Hester stammered, clearly caught off guard. During our call 90 minutes later, I essentially admitted to her that I had tapped her phone months earlier. I explained that their communication hadn't happened through that channel. If it had occurred at all, what mistake did you make? She asked. Though I understood her question, I felt spiteful. I ordered a pepperoni pizza with garlic bread, I replied. Why do you care what I eat? How do you even know what I eat? She snapped, clearly irritated. Over the years, I had learned she despised my petty behavior, though she tried to act as if she viewed me as weak. Deep down, she knew better. Well, I guess getting one thing right out of two isn't so bad, she said sarcastically. I'm not sure how you did it, but it seems you've somehow gotten back at Senator Norberto. He even threatened to rough me up for something you did, though he wouldn't say what. Thanks, by the way. My parents are furious. Yours are too. And Eliza has been avoiding me. You can't seem to understand that what Thomas and I did has nothing to do with us. Yes, about that, I began. Senator Norberto, once confident he'd retain his seat, abruptly withdrew from the Senate race 8 months before the election. He cited overwhelming mental fatigue as the reason, with everything else happening in my life, pursuing female companionship wasn't a priority. For months, I hadn't looked at another woman with interest. That was until my daughter brought it up one weekend. Dad, when do you plan on dating again? Eliza asked casually as my children spent the weekend with me. Linda's mom really wants to go out with you, she added. Her comment left me stunned. Divorce had kept me preoccupied, and I hadn't thought much about my future beyond caring for my kids during my scheduled weekends and summer weeks. She mentioned that? I asked in disbelief. She didn't exactly tell me, Dad, Eliza admitted, but I overheard her talking about it with Annie's mom. I'd be fine with it, though. I don't want you to be lonely. Just, please, not Marcy's mom. None of us kids like her. Linda's mom, Julie, had been divorced from her awful husband for 5 years. She was an energetic, curvy blonde who still carried the cheerful vibe of her cheerleading days. I'd never considered that she might be interested in me. When you're married, you don't think about other women. At least I didn't. Was that naive? Eliza, observing me quietly, chimed in. It's okay, Dad. I'm almost 9. I get how divorce works. Nate and I will be fine. Just take care of yourself. Suddenly, I found myself back in the dating scene. Julie became my first date post-divorce, and though it felt nice, it also seemed obligatory. I explained to her that I wasn't ready for anything serious so soon after re-entering the dating world. She smiled warmly and reassured me that I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Julie even shared helpful advice, like a crash course on navigating life as a divorced parent. She mentioned I'd likely attract other single moms among my kids' friends, given my reputation as a good father with a stable career, and that I wasn't unattractive. She blushed slightly as she said the last part. I continued seeing Julie, and even dated a few other single mothers. Sometimes, I barely thought about Hester or our past marriage. While I occasionally felt lonely, it wasn't enough to make me consider reconciling with her. I refused to open myself to being betrayed again. Hester, however, dismissed her affair as a careless mistake and vowed never to repeat it. A mistake? I scoffed. It was a selfish choice, a blatant disregard for your family's well-being. Her lips moved as though to respond, but no words came out. I suspected she wanted to argue, but had no valid justification, especially since contacting the senator was now pointless. One Saturday during dinner, my ex-mother-in-law shared a surprising tidbit. He told Hester never to contact him again, she revealed. He blames her for not doing enough to stop you from interfering, and he believes you're the reason he withdrew from the election. Raising an eyebrow, I continued eating in silence, choosing not to comment. A few months later, some coworkers invited me to check out a new upscale bar with a dance floor. Back when I was married, I avoided Thursday night outings entirely. But now, as a single man, I found myself saying yes more often. 4 of us grabbed a table, ordered drinks, and settled in to enjoy the vibrant atmosphere. I noticed the 2 women the moment they entered. The first appeared to be in her early 40s, but dressed like someone in their 30s trying to give off a youthful vibe. She wore a silky blue blouse, slightly unbuttoned, paired with a short skirt that emphasized her long, toned legs. Her short, dark brown hair and striking green eyes exuded confidence. In contrast, her companion, who seemed a bit older, possibly mid-40s, looked out of place in the pub. She had an air of sophistication and wealth, wearing a high-end sweater and skirt ensemble. Her silver blonde hair framed her face at shoulder length, and her dark eyes completed her elegant, beautiful appearance. The women sat at a nearby table, quickly drawing the attention of several men eager to ask them to dance. I couldn't shake the urge to invite one of them to dance, especially the dark-haired woman who seemed open to having a good time, or perhaps more. She enthusiastically accepted every dance invitation, while the blonde woman was far more reserved, dancing only occasionally and with measured movements. About an hour later, I decided to ask the blonde woman to dance. However, just as I reached their table, the brunette grabbed my hand and pulled me onto the dance floor. Completely captivated by her, I quickly forgot about her friend. We danced through upbeat songs, and when the tempo slowed, she kissed me passionately. I was mesmerized. We left the club together and went to my place, where our passion continued in the bedroom. That night, she opened up about her life, revealing that she and her friend had been celebrating her recent divorce. Rosie was an incredible lover, and we dated for about a month before she admitted she wasn't ready to commit so soon after her marriage ended. Respecting her feelings, we ended things amicably. Yet, since that night, I've often wondered about her friend, though I never got the chance to ask. A few weeks later, I found myself alone at the bar of another upscale venue, nursing a drink and enjoying some quiet time. It wasn't my weekend to have the kids, and after a hectic work week, I had the weekend to myself. She walked in alone, instantly commanding the room's attention. Her figure was reminiscent of Megan Thee Stallion's, with rich brown waves cascading down her back and shoulders. Walking confidently in 4-inch heels, she chose the seat next to me. For a moment, I felt like I'd stepped into a dream. Scrambling for a clever icebreaker, I hesitated, but before I could speak, she locked eyes with me and asked what I was drinking. I responded with a sly smile, feeling a mix of envy and admiration for her composure, my thoughts briefly scattered. "Excellent choice," she purred, her voice smooth. "A man with impeccable taste." She ordered the same neat drink I had. As we chatted, she told me about the boutique marketing company she had successfully founded years ago. She was stunning, intelligent, and a thriving business owner. Later that evening, we left together for her charming apartment. She mentioned her preference for intimacy in her own bed, a sentiment she explained many women shared, and even explored the psychology behind it. Her toned figure made it hard to believe she was 45. Our first night together was unforgettable. She was an extraordinary kisser, and I felt a connection stronger than I'd experienced since my time with Hester. In that one night, Maria Washington opened up to me more honestly than Hester had in 9 years of marriage. Maria admitted she was dedicated to her career, uninterested in having children, and preferred casual relationships with different men. Though she expressed genuine feelings for me, she made it clear she wasn't looking for a traditional commitment. Accepting this, we agreed to a casual arrangement. Over the next year, we met about once a month until Maria fell unexpectedly in love with a much younger man. "You're a lucky guy," my ex-mother-in-law would often tell me. Despite the divorce, we stayed close, bonded by mutual understanding and our shared love for the grandchildren. I still referred to her and my ex-father-in-law as Mom and Dad. "Could you do me a favor, Reggie?" she asked one day, her tone cautious. "Of course, as long as it doesn't involve your daughter," I replied. She explained her request. Her personal assistant, Cheryl, needed a date for their company Christmas party. "She's a good person, Reggie. She divorced a terrible cheater years ago and hasn't dated since. She's been hurt, and she needs to see that decent men still exist. I think you're a decent guy," she said warmly. It felt unusual, my former mother-in-law trying to set me up. "Just one thing, Mom," I interjected with humor. "Please tell me she's not boring," Mom laughed. "I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, Reggie. You might even let us keep the kids for a night or two," she teased. Mom was right. I was pleasantly surprised. Cheryl, or Sherilyn as she preferred, was a charming and delightful woman with a well-proportioned figure. She was warm without being overbearing, and had an endearing habit of wrinkling her nose and squinting her green eyes when amused. More importantly, her personality was truly wonderful. I stuck close to her throughout the evening, giving her my undivided attention. She seemed to appreciate the gesture. While she participated in conversations, she often let others take the lead, which I guessed was understandable given her reserved nature. We sat with my in-laws at their table. Mom was her usual graceful self, while Dad started the evening on the quiet side, though he became more animated as the night went on. I surprised Cheryl with my dancing skills, honed from years of trying to please my ex-wife, who had loved to dance. Cheryl was an excellent dancer herself, particularly with faster rhythms, and during slow dances, she matched me perfectly, as though we'd been partners for years. I savored the feeling of her body close to mine as I walked her to the door. She gave me a soft kiss on the lips and slipped her phone number into my hand. I realized I owed my in-laws more time with their grandchildren. After 3 days, I called Sherilyn to invite her out. She agreed, and we planned a date for the following Friday at one of the city's top Italian restaurants, followed by an art exhibit at a nearby gallery. For our date, Sherilyn dressed more daringly than she had for the Christmas party, which impressed me even more. We had a fantastic evening, and over the next few weeks, we went out 3 more times. At that point, I felt it was the right time for her to meet my 8-year-old daughter and for me to meet her daughter. We spent a fun-filled day playing mini golf and enjoying a picnic at a nearby park. Overall, the outing went well, especially since the 2 girls quickly formed a close friendship. However, as expected for his age, my son wasn't thrilled about the situation and grumbled about all girls having cooties. Sherilyn and I began meeting several times a week, and when I had my kids, we engaged in activities as a group, all 5 of us together. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until a few weeks into the new school year, when I received a surprising phone call from Hester. "I don't know what your girlfriend has been teaching my kids, but your son ended up in the principal's office today for fighting. His face is all scratched up, and he's been suspended for 3 days. All he keeps saying is that it started because of some girl named Monique he's calling his sister," she fumed over the phone. "First of all, you have no right to speak about my girlfriend that way. I'll come over after dinner and take Nate out for some ice cream. Let's not jump to conclusions until we know the full story," I replied calmly. I heard her frustrated sigh before she hung up. After dinner, I picked up Nate and took him to a family-owned ice cream shop. As soon as he got into my car, I checked him over. He had a small cut on his lip and a scratch on the left side of his face. "You should see the other guy, Dad," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. "What really happened, Nathan Abraham?" I asked, using his full name to show I was serious. He winced at the sound of his middle name, then explained, "A kid was picking on Mo, so I told him to leave her alone. He threw the first punch and then I hit him back, hard. They say I broke his nose. It made a loud crack, and there was blood everywhere." He tried to suppress a grin. The boy who had been bothering Monique was 2 years older than Nate. "Will Mo tell me the same story?" I asked. "Of course, Dad. I wouldn't have hit him if he hadn't swung first. I was just protecting Mo. You always tell me to look out for Allie, so I figured that meant Mo too. She's really small, Dad, Nate replied. He made a good point. Monique had inherited her mother's petite build, making her noticeably shorter than most kids her age. I had always emphasized to Nate the importance of protecting his sister, and it seemed he now viewed Monique as part of the family. It was heartwarming to see how childhood innocence could sometimes outweigh adult logic. I'm proud of you for standing up for Mo, but let's keep this between us for now, I told him. I'll talk to the principal and figure out what can be done. You might also want to let your mother know about Mo. It seems you and Allie haven't been keeping her fully updated on my life, which I appreciate, but it might be better coming from you too, I added. Nate, at 7 years old, seemed to understand completely. And Dad, when are you and Sherry getting married? She's awesome, you know, he said. As I mentioned, kids grow up quickly, and he was right. It was time to take that next step with Sherry. The next day, I contacted the principal. Although the school had a strict zero-tolerance policy for fighting, even in cases of self-defense, they also had a zero-tolerance stance on bullying. After interviewing witnesses, the other boy received a 6-day suspension. While I didn't agree with the policy, I advised Nate to accept his punishment without complaint. I reassured him of my support and promised to propose to Sherry as soon as I could afford the ring. Things became more complicated when Hester discovered that Sherry was my ex-mother-in-law's personal assistant and that Mom had orchestrated our first meeting. "What on earth, Mom? Aren't you supposed to be on my side?" Hester reportedly yelled later. "There's no your side," Mom replied calmly. "He's not coming back to you. You ruined that yourself. Why let a great man go to waste?" Sherilyn is a wonderful woman and a dear friend. She deserves someone like Reggie. According to Mom, Hester's reaction was a piercing scream. While both of my kids enjoyed spending time with Sherry, my daughter in particular, seemed to admire her caring nature toward me. Sherry had an instinctive way of fulfilling my needs, which made me feel like the king of my world. This inspired me to treat her like my queen. Ally seemed to enjoy witnessing the playful affection between us. "I'm not sure if you two are adorable or annoying," Allie remarked one day, "but I like being around to watch it." A few months later, we had an intimate wedding ceremony with only our 3 children, my parents, and my ex-in-laws as guests. The court clerk officiating the ceremony was surprised when my ex-mother-in-law stood as Sherry's maid of honor. "It's quite a story," I laughed when she asked about it. "Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition," I added, referencing the classic British comedy show Monty Python's Flying Circus. But in truth, nothing could have prepared me for the unexpected visit I received from 2 federal marshals. One Monday morning, 2 officers arrived at my office, their demeanor tense. They were investigating an incident involving a former senator who had been injured in an altercation at a high-end Houston restaurant. My name, along with those of other disgruntled husbands, had surfaced as potential suspects. "I can't say I feel sorry for the senator," I remarked to the stern marshals. "Nobody deserves it more. And just for the record, that fool slept with my wife almost 4 years ago. If I'd wanted revenge, don't you think I would have acted long before now?" I added sarcastically. Their questioning was only the beginning. A week later, a reporter from the Associated Press showed up at my office seeking information about the same incident. Somehow, he had gotten hold of a confidential list of 26 women the senator was alleged to have had affairs with during his political career. People knew about Hester's involvement with the senator, although I certainly never made it public. Over the years, Hester probably shared it with more people than I ever did, as she seemed to take pride in her accomplishment. However, I couldn't help but wonder how proud she felt when the senator's scandal came to light, linking her as one of his mistresses. "Why would you reveal that to him?" She practically yelled at me over the phone. "I didn't," I replied calmly. "He told me your name was listed among the senator's lovers. All I did was confirm the accuracy of it. I wasn't about to lie to save you from embarrassment." "I am not promiscuous," she shrieked before I ended the call. I have to admit, I chuckled a bit after hanging up. I even entertained the idea of escaping the inevitable fallout by going on an extended vacation once the story hit the news. But Sherry quickly talked me out of it. "Don't start a fight, stick to the truth." She cheated on you, you divorced her, and you moved on. Let that be the end of it, Sherry advised. Sadly, my children were going to endure teasing and mean-spirited comments for the rest of their school years. The fact that their mother had been unfaithful would continue to haunt us for a long time. I also felt immense sympathy for my ex-in-laws, who had become like family to me over the years. After the article was published, we invited them to stay at the home Sherry and I had purchased, offering them a place to retreat for a couple of weeks. During their visit, they largely stayed inside and avoided answering any calls. I love my daughter. You know how parents feel, but I'm deeply ashamed that she thought this kind of behavior was okay, her father confessed. No father wants his child to be seen that way. Over time, the scandal gradually faded and life returned to normal. Little by little, my kids began spending more time at the house with Sherry, Monique, and me. Our home naturally became the neighborhood hangout spot for their friends. Even though it wasn't a formal arrangement, initially, Hester wasn't happy about this, but I think the situation eventually settled. I made sure that Allie and Nate stayed in regular contact with Hester to avoid any accusations that I was keeping her away from her kids. Their open communication seemed to help. My parents' frequent visits also eased any lingering tensions. When the children were with me, we rarely spoke about Hester. Although she would always be their mother, she was simply my ex. Out of respect for Sherry, the kids also avoided bringing her up, as they had grown accustomed to calling Sherry Mom. At first, Hester's parents seemed uneasy about this, but their discomfort soon disappeared, as they had already been close to Sherry long before our marriage. Amid all the changes in my life and family, I didn't pay much attention to Hester's personal life. I was aware through remarks from the kids that she occasionally dated, but I was caught off guard one afternoon when Allie told me her mother was engaged. A wave of sadness washed over me as I reflected on what might have been, but then I felt Sherry's comforting embrace, and my sorrow quickly shifted to gratitude for what I now had in my life. My wife never imagined that infidelity would ruin not only her life, but also that of her affair partner. I had always seen her as my most trusted companion, reliable and honest, so her betrayal came as an unimaginable shock. Tonight, I had hoped for an enjoyable evening, though I was uncertain. For the first time in 3 years, I put on my navy tuxedo, looking polished but feeling out of place. Instead of lounging in my favorite chair with a drink, I found myself attending a high-profile fundraiser with colleagues in our small Midwest town. I had asked my wife to dress formally, and she didn't disappoint. Perhaps she went overboard. At 35, she was at her most attractive, stunning in a revealing maroon dress that caught every eye as she descended the stairs. While she looked breathtaking, I made it clear she was my partner. Though I preferred to stay home, she seemed perfectly at ease mingling with the town's elite, her natural charisma effortlessly drawing people to her. Returning from the bar, I noticed her deep in conversation with Senator Thomas Norberto, a charismatic man often compared to Tom Sitch. Their interaction was unsettling. Her attention to him made me feel like an outsider. When they appeared to ignore me, I intervened politely, reminding the senator that I was sitting there. He continued speaking with my amused wife, so I acted more decisively, placing our drinks between them until he took the hint. When he finally acknowledged me, he said he'd find his seat elsewhere, brushing me off. Angry, I returned to my place, muttering under my breath about his arrogance